And he didn't do the gold. He was the man who drove all the supplies to where all the people were that were looking for gold.
The dynamite, actually.
What?
The dynamite, actually, because he knew horses.
I'm not hearing you, I'm sorry. It's never mind. Okay.
Dynamite.
Okay, and so he, all the money that he earned, he saved, and then he came back home, and after, okay, I'm trying to talk and read at the same time, that's not working. At the time in history, England's practice was to send their incorrigible criminals to live out their sentence in Australia. Many of these criminals had to work the mines since it was France's responsibility to protect what he had to transport. He needed to carry a gun. He must have had many harrowing incidents because he suffered for years with nightmares related to those experiences. He was paid in gold, and being a good Scotsman, he saved a good share of it. After 6 years, he returned to Scotland. It took 79 days by boat, arriving on May 20th. As Elizabeth had been waiting those 6 long years, he proposed and married her on August 17th, 1865. Apparently their marriage was still without the blessing of her family, since it was said that she was disinherited. 6 days later, on August 23rd, 1865, they left for America. She packed all her belongings, her clothing, kitchen items, and bedding in the Dawson trunk, which is sitting in my living room. Over the years, this trunk has served many purposes, including as a table in the kitchen area for the misbehaving grandchildren, who were banned from the main table by Grandpa James. The trunk was also used to store household items and as a stand to hold the coffin of a deceased family member. It was placed in the living room during the wake of Catherine Spence Muirhead in 33, Robert and Jessie Muirhead of 35, and in 2007, my son, Jim. 2 years ago, to renew family traditions, James K. Muirhead, son of William J. Muirhead, the current owner of the family, was, wait on the Scottish trunk. Oh, jeez, I forgot. Okay. In that trunk was all her belongings that she could bring from Scotland. In my trunk now is all my linens. I feel a little bit overwhelmed with stuff. But Francis and Elizabeth Spence landed in Quebec, Canada on September 7th, 1865. They traveled to the state of Michigan and stayed there about a year. They then moved to a small farm in Beebe Grove in Crete Township, east of Walbrick and Richton Road, where Catherine Spence was born on June 1st, 1868. On June 24th, 1870, Francis and Elizabeth Spence purchased the land currently known as the Muirhead Farm in two 40-acre parcels from Moses and Hannah Cook in the amount of $3,000. Amazing. It appears that they made a $1,000 down payment, as there was a mortgage of $2,000 to be paid to the Cooks in 8 annual installments, and they were paid off in 7 1 year early. On the land was a small cabin built by Moses Cook. This historical importance of this home was described in the Crete's early history, printed in March of 1922 by the Crete Women's Club. He built his house and barn of logs hewed by himself. Timbers in the barn were put together with wooden pins, and he had the best house anywhere near there, because it was also one log higher. His home was one of the Underground Railroad stations, and he had the honor of entertaining Abraham Lincoln in his log house. Evidently he knew he was coming, so he had to build it, because Abraham Lincoln was quite tall. Moses and Hannah Cook hid escaped slaves in their home and barn as one of the 2 stations in Crete on the Underground Railroad. At night, after feeding them, Moses moved the fugitives to the next spot, hiding them in his wagon. In Chicago, they were hidden in boxes and finally were freed when they reached Canada. They built the home that Bill and I currently live in right now, and it was built in 1870, and they had 2 children, Catherine and Margaret. And okay. Elizabeth Spence, who was not a healthy woman, died at the home at age 59 in 1887, never to return to her beloved Scotland. On the other hand, Francis returned several times for business and family visits, and he lived until he was 88 years old and dying in 1920. So that's the only part I want to talk about. And Catherine is the one who inherited the farm, and Margaret got another farm in Morocco. Okay. And she had 4 sons, no daughters. And Catherine had, what, 9? 8, okay. Crazy.
I will talk about a lot of the things that she just mentioned, but I go into detail about some things. She went into more detail about other things. But if anybody has any comments or questions, it can be an open discussion as I talk. So, here's a picture of part of my family tree that I have on Ancestry, and those are all first cousins. So you can kind of imagine how difficult it is to talk about the details about what we're talking about. I think you have about 85 people in the bottom row, all first cousins. So, you know, you can talk about this for hours. And here's just a, didn't know you two were gonna be here. But here's just, now the words aren't loaded, but here's just kind of a list of the descendants of those 2 that she was talking about, Francis and Elizabeth Spence. And you can see, like Bill and Karen and Barb, they are all 4th generation descendants of the first 2. And I would be, is it cut it off? I would be like 7th generation. So the first section we'll talk about is the paternal lineage of the Muirhead family. So originally, I'll start with John Muirhead. He was baptized in 1791 in St. Ninians, which is in Stirlingshire, and that was the parish of the town of Bannockburn, which Karen mentioned a few minutes ago. He was the son of William and Isabella Muirhead, and they were the farmers of a farm called Cat Craig, which is actually still around today. And I read somewhere that they had owned that property since the late 1600s. And there's a photo of the property today. So I think that was just a few years ago. Obviously not the original building.
Is that the Dawn place?
What?
Dawson place?
No, that is this is on the opposite line.
Oh,
So the Dawsons, you know, go back this way. This is the Muirheads there.
Okay.
And it's everything you'll find here, it's all very close. I mean, it might take you half an hour to drive 2 miles in Scotland, but everything is like, you know, just a few miles apart. So now we'll move on to Janet McIntosh. She was born in 1793 in a town called Killin, and that was in the bordering county to Stirlingshire, which is Perthshire, and it borders Stirling to the north. And, you know, I'll mention here, I have their names or the place on the map highlighted. So she was the daughter of Daniel and Elizabeth McIntosh, and they were innkeepers in that town.
The records on the left, is that baptism records or?
Yes,
No.
this one is baptism.
Mm.
The first one is also baptism. So, those
Protestant or
two,
Catholic?
was that?
Protestant or Catholic?
They were Presbyterian,
Presbyterian.
Protestant, yeah. There's a lot of, I think there was a lot of Catholicism in Scotland, like just a few decades before this time period, but the official religion of Scotland, I guess, now is Church of Scotland, which I think is Presbyterian technically. So at some point, Janet had moved to the St. Ninians, Bannockburn area. They were married December 11th, 1812, and that is their marriage document. And here are actually photos that I took while I was there of the church that they were married in. So this was, I guess there's archaeological evidence that this was built in the 12th century, some parts of it, but the tower there used to be the front of the church, and that was built in the mid to late 1600s. During the Jacobite Rebellion in 1745, they were actually storing explosives in the space between these two buildings, and they blew up, and so they tore everything down, kept the original bell tower there, and then they built the new church behind that, which I have a photo of later. So from this marriage, you have almost 10 children. Most of them survived into adulthood actually, which is rare for that time. So John and Janet had moved from that Cat Craig farm into the city, and they had, I think, 4 buildings built for their business. John was a publican, so he had a bar, alcohol store, and he had a butcher shop, a dairy, some kind of grocery shop, and that was started before 1841. So this is actually the envelope. Somebody in Scotland sent me this, the envelope for a letter that was written to them in 1841. And here's a photo of one of the buildings from 1927. This is when some members of the family made a trip back to Scotland. So they stopped at all of the key family history locations there. And here are the buildings today. One says Key Store, one is an Indian restaurant. We actually stopped in the Indian restaurant. Couldn't get upstairs because they were doing renovations, but all of the children from the generation I just mentioned and the generation after that were all born in the top floor of that left house. There's some old brickwork on the back of the building. I don't know exactly how old that is, but I mean, these two buildings were built at least 1841, and there's been obviously renovations to the outside. But here's something that might be original. Old wall behind one of the buildings too. And there's a sign there, Muirhead Terrace. The family, I think they gave up their last ownership of some kind of business on that road in the 80s. So they actually had ownership of these businesses for about 140 years or more. And you actually have pictures that are not showing up. But this is the son of John and Janet, William Muirhead, and this is my 4th great-grandfather, Barb and Bill's 2nd great-grandfather. He was born in 1831. John, his father, died in 1851. His mother, Janet, died in 1856. And after that, he inherited the business. He definitely grew up learning the trade and learning the business. And from 1856 up until 1902, when he died, he had ownership of that business and passed it to his son and then grandson. So Mary Ann Gillespie, she was born 1836, just across the road at a farm called Wester Greenyards. Her parents were the owners of that farm, and they hired tenants to farm their land for them. So Mary Ann and William were probably growing up about half a mile from each other. They got married 1860, again in that same church. And here is the earliest photo I have of any family in Scotland. So I believe this is actually mid 1860s or maybe about 1870. And this is behind the farmhouse of that Wester Greenyards farm. The guy in the top hat there without facial hair, that is William Muirhead, and his wife Mary Ann is the woman in the middle holding the baby. And here's another photo behind the Muirhead Terrace. This one is interesting because that archway is actually where they would drive their vans or their buggies through to bring like milk or meat or anything into the back where they could load it in the back of the building. There's another plaque, 1929 in the middle. It says TM, that's for Tom Muirhead, Thomas Muirhead. And that one there, these are apartments. Up there it says JEM, that stands for Jeannie Eason Muirhead, which is another aunt. So here are all their children. Again, they had 2 children who did not survive. They had a little more than the previous generation. There's their, I don't know what you'd call it, but that's like their communal headstone, basically. They're all buried around that epitaph, I guess. So, William and Mary Ann had a son, James Muirhead. He was born in 1865. He immigrated August 29th, 1883, and he came to America with his older brother John and younger sister Mary. And we actually found this the other day at Bill and Karen's house, but there's a book they have, I think it's a Bible. In the front it says, "To James Muirhead as a token of remembrance, 15th August, 1883, so that's just 14 days before he left. I think that was written by his father. So after he came to America, he, his brother, and sister lived with their Aunt Janet McLaren in Cleveland, in Ohio. And then a few years after that, he found work in Chicago and kind of just did odd jobs. So that ends the paternal lineage for now. This is the maternal lineage of the Spences. So I'll start where Karen also started. William Dawson, born 1797, and Catherine Anderson, born 1800. They were married 1822. Again, they were baptized and married in that same church that the others were. And these are owned by like a second or third cousin in Scotland. The left side is actually Catherine's cross-stitching sampler, I guess, from when she was about 10 to 12 years old. So that would be 1810, 1812. And then the one on the right is one she did for her wedding. And there you see the initials in the top corners, William Dawson, Catherine Anderson. And that would be, what was it, 1822. So this is the road in Bannockburn. This is called Quakerfield, and the Dawsons lived at Quakerfield. It's probably about a 10-minute walk from where the Muirheads lived, and they actually were tenant farmers for the Gillespie family at Wester Greenyards. So they had even more children. They had 4 of them that did not survive. Those are all the photos that I have of each of their children. Top left you have Janet, the youngest. Top right, James. Bottom left is Elizabeth, and that's our grandmother. Bottom right is Alexander, and in the middle is John. So their daughter Elizabeth, born 1828, baptized in the same church. And like Karen mentioned, Francis Spence, who was 4 years younger, he was born a ways west near Glasgow in 1832. His parents were William Spence and Margaret Cullen. His father was a quarry worker. His mother died pretty early on, and his father remarried. They had, I think his father had about 7 or 8 children, A few of them died young. One of them was actually he would work in Glasgow loading stuff onto ships, and he actually fell in the river and drowned. And he also had another brother who immigrated to Illinois named James, who was a coal miner in Braidwood, and he actually died in a mining, like the mine collapsed on him, because I guess the coal down there is soft, so it was really easy to collapse. So, in order to make money, to presumably move to America, if he had that plan already, he did leave on the HMS Royal Charter on October 22nd, 1858, left from the port of Liverpool, and then he arrived in Melbourne, Australia, December 28th that same year, so 2 months, 6 days. And he settled in a town called Kyneton, and that is in Victoria. This is a photo of the town from when he would have been there. This is actually 1861. This one is also 1861, and then this one is 1865. And I actually found a few newspaper articles that mention him. The Dawsons were always found in newspapers doing like plowing competitions, plowing fields, and it surprised me when I found these, because Francis Spence also did plowing competitions in Australia while he was there. So, meanwhile, back in Scotland, this is like an announcement for William Dawson selling his property in Stirling, and he was going to move very far south, probably about 30 miles into the Scottish borders. So I highlighted there about the area where they had moved to. This is the house that they moved to. This is called Stonefold, and it's basically been unchanged from the outside since they moved there. It's gone through, I think the last person in the family that owned the property died in the 30s, maybe 1936, and it was then, sold to, I think there was an old woman who lived there until the 50s or 60s, and then there's been about 5 owners since that point. So that's the front of the house. This is the road leading up to it. The house will be on the left from here. There's the field in the front of the house facing the road, and this area differs from Stirling because, this is all hills, farmland. Stirling is more populated. There's a stone wall you can kind of see behind those trees. That was pretty old. I actually stole one of the stones from the wall there. I had to take something. This is the side of the house. The front would be on the right-hand side. And then I have a lot of pictures of these. I don't know if they're stables, storage buildings, just general farm stuff. You can see there was an old door that they bricked up, I think. There's some of those old roof tiles, clay tiles. Got one here, but this one is from Phil. They use that for storing wood now, but that I think was the oldest looking structure on the property. So then I'll go through William and Catherine's children. John Dawson moved actually to the borders from Stirling a couple years before his parents did. He farmed at a farm called Swinton Bridge End, and we visited this. It was a lot smaller than Stonefold where his parents lived, but at that point he didn't have nearly as big of a family. Next one is Peter Dawson. He farmed at Grizzlerig, and he started farming there in 1860s and died in 1912. So this is actually a like a parking garage basically for horses and buggies. In the back of the property, they were growing soybeans. Their youngest daughter, Janet, she moved to, I think, the capital of that county, Kelso, and she lived in that, you know, you walk in that door, you go up the stairs, and she was in the second floor of that building, and that's what she would see out her window in the morning, town square. She was married to Andrew Walker, who was widowed twice already, had children that I think were older than she was, and he was 23 years older. You have Alexander and James Dawson. They farmed at Stonefold, the same place that their parents bought. Again, from 1860s until 1920, when Alexander died. There's a picture of me standing in the same place as Alexander in that photo. That's about a 110-year difference, I think. And then the one on the right is James with his wife. And this actually ties back in again to the Muirheads because James is married to Christina Muirhead, who is a sister of William, the one who owned the businesses in the city. So, back in Australia, Francis had made enough money. He came back on the HMS Great Britain, left March 16th, and arrived May 20th of 1865. And then August 17th, so just a couple of months later, he married Elizabeth, actually at Stonefold, her parents' house. There's their marriage document there, actually has a lot of information. It has both of their parents' names, their mother's maiden names, witnesses. So he's got a brother, she has a sister, and anything else? No. So 6 days later, they left on the SS St. George, and they arrived in Quebec on September 7th, 1865. And that there, I couldn't find a picture of the ship, so that's just an advertisement for the company that had the ships that would, you know, from St. George. After coming to Canada, they moved down into Michigan for about a year, and then after that, I think early 1868, the original property that they lived at was that one she mentioned near Volbrecht and Richton Road, I think. And that's actually, looks like it might just be less than a mile away from where they ended up settling, right there. So that's now where Bill and Karen live. They bought that in January 1870. At that point, their first daughter, Catherine, was born 1868 on that first property. So yeah, Catherine, first property, Margaret, and that was the current property.
Here's
So-
my house.
So, land was purchased from Moses and Hannah Cook January 24th, 1870. This photo, which they brought with them, is taken about 1882. You have Catherine, the daughter, Elizabeth, the mother, Margaret, second daughter, and Francis, the father.
And if you look to the right of the porch, this guy blew up this picture for me. That's a dog.
Oh yeah, sitting just
Right.
below the window.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
So, this is kind of, in my mind, how Catherine would have known James, or James would have heard about Catherine. So, like I mentioned, James's aunt, his paternal aunt, was married to Catherine's maternal uncle. And, I mean, they were from the same town in Scotland. They lived in the same area in Illinois. So, somehow he would have heard about her, I'm sure. And they were married Christmas 1888 in the Greek Congregational Church, and that is their wedding photo. On their honeymoon, I guess they went back to Scotland, and there they still have furniture like cabinets and shelves and things that they took with them. But James also bought 2 horses, a male and a female. Lord March is the male, Venture is the female. And the story that I heard is that they wanted him to buy insurance for if the horses like slipped and broke a leg on the ship, but he didn't want to pay that much, so he actually had a blacksmith create cleated horseshoes so they would not fall over on the ship.
I heard they were rubber.
You're probably right.
My dad said.
Right. Here are some photos you've probably seen. I think this is the farm, the current farm, about 1900, 1905. Here's a photo that Barb had. This is a threshing machine.
Yes, it is.
I don't know much about how that works, but I think it's a cool picture. So. And then they also had, I don't know if you call it a business or just kind of like an advertising thing for selling horses, whatever they did. Owned by James Muirhead, Frank Clemmy, and William Tamer.
James Muirhead, the grandfather to Bill, was quite known for his, of course he's Scottish. When they were building the brick barn that stands today, the story was he wanted 3 thick walls on this barn, and he found out that they had only put 2 bricks and put something in between the bricks, and he made him take it down and start all over. And that barn is still standing there, and on a really hot summer day, we would make sure the animals were inside the barn because that's where it would be cool. And there is
Wish I had a
Francis
photo of that.
Spence.
Yes. These are also from Barb. I think these are 1920, and it said like the old barn fell down or something like that, probably in a storm. Francis Spence is on the right. At this point, he's 87 or 88, and actually he was the oldest resident of Crete when he died. He was also a pallbearer at Willard Wood's funeral, which I didn't know. And then yeah, you have James and Catherine Muirhead with some of their kids. And they had a big family. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids. And then actually, I thought it was kind of funny. You can see how tall how short he is, Francis Spence, in that top photo, top left. He's all the way on the left in the back standing. And I think he was probably about 5 feet, 5'2", something like that. And I actually have, I don't know when we would come up and look at these, but I have a cane here that I believe is his cane. I compared it to some photos I have of him, and it doesn't look similar to any of the photos, but he had a different one in each picture, so it's possible. And there is, I believe that's the last picture that was taken of like the whole family together, of just the first 2 or 3 generations.
Right.
And they would have reunions at Starved Rock. That would be halfway between Crete and the town in Iowa where one of their sons lived. So at that point, most of their grandkids were born, I think, and they're all sitting in the front row.
And none of the children had died yet.
Right, right. So
Where's Bill at on that picture?
We're not born yet.
there is
We're not
a-
born.
there's a
Bill
Bill
and
there.
Barb are not born yet.
Okay.
But yeah, what had happened is Catherine, the mother, she died, I think August 1934, and then Robert, their youngest son, died in the middle of the next year. I think he had diabetes.
Diabetes.
Okay. And then daughter Jessie died later that year, and can't remember the details, but she had actually
Fire.
been caught on fire.
Yeah.
I think she was trying to burn something or something caught her dress on fire. And then James, the father, died 1938.
Well, I was always pleased to know that the mother died before her two
Right.
children did.
Right.
17 months before her two children did. Yeah, that's all.
I think that's all I have. But I have these up here if anybody wants to see stuff or pass it around or something.
What's the name Muirhead mean?
It means the head of a moor, which I think a moor is like some kind of river, swamp, something like that.
Oh,
That's a
Field.
geographical feature.
You're right.
What's the blanket then?
This is a horsehair blanket that I believe they would use like during winter. This one is, I have two of them. This one is super heavy, really thick. They would use it when they were riding buggies around town in the winter.
Or sleighs.
Sleighs, yeah. Like her dad being a mail carrier on the sleigh. She mentioned he would always have one of these. And I brought this one because the design on the back, red flowers, colored
We
red.
still have that sled. It's in the barn.
Yes.
Is it upstairs or downstairs? Okay, then we'll need a crane to get it out of there.
How long did you spend in Scotland?
I think just under 2 weeks.
And is their language English or
Yes.
hard to understand English?
Yes, that one. Because some people say that it's a separate language. They call it Scots, but it's basically just so like accented that you really, like a native English speaker from anywhere else can't understand them. They have some words that they borrow from Gaelic, which is the original language, but I had an easier time understanding than the lady who we were with. She was from New Zealand, so and if somebody didn't understand me when I was talking normally, I would say it in a Scottish accent and they would pick it up. So. It happened a few times.
So did you buy a kilt while you were there?
No.
No?
It's too much. It's like thousands of dollars for one.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have a picture of, I should give it to you so you can put it in your speech. Bill, the tallest man in that picture, when he was 20, and the baby would be Robert, who's the farthest on the right, was 2. 2 and 20, so that poor woman, oh my God.
I'd probably pull that up. Let's see what else. I also found this when I was at Stonefold. Just a piece of old glass, bottom of a bottle. And from what I could tell, it might be 1850s or 1860s, but there's no markings on it, and it's looks like it's handmade. So maybe one of your.
Can you see through it? Is it transparent?
It's pretty thick. You can kind of see through.
Translucent. It is, yeah. You see through
One thing that we did for Elizabeth Spence, Muirhead, Elizabeth Spence. She died so many years before her husband that her gravestone had sunken into the ground. And Spence, Francis Spence, of course, buried next to her. And we tried to get a round stone like his, but it was only available in Europe, which we couldn't afford. So what we did was, at one of our reunions, we bought a big stone from the farm and had it engraved and put it on her spot she's buried in Crete, him and her buried in Crete. And that was, that was kind of like our way of honoring Elizabeth, because she came here to this country with one load, you know, one suitcase, you know, I forget what it's called now, and she never got to go home again because she was disinherited by her family. And she came to this foreign country to her and raised 2 children and took care of her husband, and I just think that was a marvelous accomplishment on her part.
From 1866.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, what?
I don't know if I sent you the entry for Francis Spence's first property in Phoebe's Grove.
No.
It's the northeast corner of Bulbrecht and Torrance.
Okay. I'll try to remember.
I forget what year it is.
Okay.
Around 1870. I'll make sure.
Richton and Torrance, or?
Yeah, Richton and Torrance, the northeast corner.
Ryan,
Yeah.
when we built our house in Plum Valley, my dad looked out the window from up front, up top, and he said, I think I could see my grandfather's farm, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't there, of course, because it had long been, but that's where he settled, and he knew, because my dad was named after Francis Spence, and they were like this, couldn't separate, you know, and my dad was, the grandpa Spence was 20 years old when my dad died, when he died when my dad was 20, and so he was very close to him, and so he knew where that farm was, the original farm. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Francis Muirhead was the mailman?
Yep,
That's his cane? That's your
No.
dad?
no,
No.
This, I believe,
That's my
is his grandfather's cane.
Oh,
Like his grandfather Francis. I don't know if you've seen that. But
There's some pictures around of him unloading mail uptown here. I don't know if that's at the community center in that one
he was
wall.
he was the first rural
Yeah,
mail
right,
carrier,
right.
and he used the sleigh the first couple winters, but then he got a farm. Yeah, but that was early 1900s.
Yeah.
Because the boys couldn't leave the farm till they were 21. They were not allowed.
Yeah, had to stick around. My great aunt went to Shroggy School,
Yeah?
F Men's Hall out there, and the teacher let them out of class to see the first mailman go by.
Is that right?
I don't know if that was your
Hey,
your grandfather
Well, my dad,
or your dad
he
or not.
would have been, because he had all the way from state line over to where Governor State is now,
Oh, wow.
and all the way from Steger Road to Goodnow. That was his
Probably was him.
every day.
How about
That isn't
that
it huge?
together?
And then when Lincoln was built, it was divided into 2 routes.
Okay, now who is Steen Muirhead? I saw
That's
his name.
Bill's
up there.
dad. That's-
Bill's dad, okay.
That's his middle name. His real name is William. He was the 3rd born son.
James.
James Steen. He was the 3rd born, because he was named after the father.
Okay, cause I
Right.
knew Hempers, I'm related to Hempers, and they always talk about Steen Muirhead.
Yeah,
Which is down the
they had
road
that
from each
really
other.
nice farm. My
Yeah.
dad always talked about them when he came out to see me.
Was one of them a custodian at the school?
Yes.
That would be my dad after
Yeah,
he
that'd be her
retired from
dad.
the Rouse.
And there's a plaque for him at the school.
I remember.
Yeah, when the grandparents died, most of the 9 kids were either deceased themselves or married and gone off the farm, except for Steen. And so he was left to, take care of the farm, which he did, and he paid each of his siblings their portion of the farm. When they divided it out, and the last check he wrote was to Barb's dad, and her dad would not cash it. He carried it in his wallet till the day he died, because he thought that Steen worked hard enough and had paid everybody their share already.
So you said that who was it that came here, James?
Yeah,
And-
James Muirhead.
Lived out on Richton Road farther east.
That was Francis Spence.
Okay, and then,
Yeah.
then bought the farm place on Richton Road where Bill's at Bill and
Right.
Karen are at right now.
Right.
And that was a log cabin, and then they built the house that you guys live in now in 1870.
Right.
So,
That's what I think.
you know, they were prosperous enough to buy a log cabin and then build a house 5 years later.
Right.
And you see that quite typically with up and down the line there. Some of these people, they prospered, and I'm sure they worked together with their neighbors to build houses and stuff for each other. That had to be quite a community there.
What I heard was that the grandpa of Spence, when he went to Australia, because he came from a horse environment, he would drive the horse wagons to the mines with the explosives, the nitroglycerin, whatever it was, because he knew how to handle the horses and keep them calm. And he made a lot of money.
Hazard hauling.
Hazard hauling, yeah, he really did. And he brought chunks of gold home, really did. I have a ring that it's real gold, so it's real soft.
Chris, that's not that rock that you,
Yeah.
you better have that thing checked.
No, it's in the bank, and I don't even know what to do with it, because you can't wear
You
it.
still got one? Or a piece of the
I've got the
gold?
ring that he
Okay.
made from it.
Oh, really? Well, that's
And I
nice.
don't know what to do with it, but anyway.
Give it to me.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. And you said that the Muirhead, James Muirhead, he heard about the women at the farm.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
why he went.
Yeah, they told me.
And it wasn't just a job that he happened to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
He knew.
that's why
Yeah, those stories are.
Yeah, they are.
that's why I put this up here, because it's just like all tangled, hard to explain. But
I heard that.
One of the stories I like is there was a contract when Catherine and James Muirhead moved into the house and Francis Spence was still alive. There was a contract between him and the couple that he would get room and board, and he'd have a horse and a buggy, and James was to make sure the trees were trimmed, and there's just and we have a copy of all that. And and that was a 5-year contract. And there was no more after that, so we thought it must have worked out pretty good.
Growing up
I
in
don't
Crete,
think-
you probably had the same issue, had to met relatives every couple years, that I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
Had to go outside of Crete to get married to make sure it wasn't a relative.
I think Francis Spence was quite a character. I mean, it sounds like him to have a contract. I didn't realize that, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
he knew what he was doing.
Well, with the Muirheads, you're related to the Poppies and the Armelinos. You mentioned Albert Armelino. We mentioned his name last week. He's 106,
104.
104.
Yeah.
Oh,
And you spent some time with him
Yep.
He's
recently.
amazing. He still drives.
Yeah, I know, he comes to church, yeah.
Yeah, he's something else.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
He's a wonderful guy.
man, it's unbelievable.
Anybody else have any more questions or comments? If not, I guess I'll move on with our meeting, and Chris will have this stuff out here for you to take a look at if you want to get up and take a look at his artifacts that he brought along here. So just thanks again, Chris, for making your presentation.